I get those goosebumps every time.
I just have to get the big fella off the bench.
Could this be their last chance now? In it comes, Monster to the front! He scored! Harry Monster scored!
I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too numb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need that line to throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me outside? Sipping low key and I get those goosebumps every time. I'm around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times. I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype.
Here we go. Welcome all to Loaded Mag NUFC, Full Loaded Transfer Show. We are back. It is January. This is what we do. Talk transfers on this channel. And we're back again. Boys, how are we? Daz, Chris, how are things? Are we fully over the game on Monday? We ready to rock and roll now with this window?
Back again, third night on a row, Pete. Yeah, like yourself, doing a bit of chatting on Twitter as well today, and yeah, have my own little support group now. The South American contingent, we're a therapy group of how we keep missing out on these South American lads that we talk about. So good to chat to Foxy and Brazil Kane today on that. So we're all of the similar mindset that we should be bringing in someone from South America, some young wonder kids, but it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. But apart from that, I'm good.
Stuff. Chris, how are you, fella?
Good, mate. Yeah, all good. I am fully recovered from Monday now. Looking forwards. So really looking forward to having Graeme on tonight. You always know it's transfer season when we get Graeme on, so very excited for Graeme to come on. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Good stuff. And look, welcome to everyone in the chat. If you haven't already, housekeeping as always, click that like button if you haven't already, and consider to subscribe to the channel. Growing again as always, heading towards that 7K. Help us along the way and show support. And if you want to become a member, become one of those loaded ultras. I think we had someone last night. Was it Shane who became a member?
2 years.
24
he's been a member.
months. Yeah, fair play. Yeah. So you want to come a loaded ultra, feel free to do so. But look, we're here to talk to the main man, and let's get him in. From the HITC, welcome in Graeme Bailey.
Welcome, Graeme.
Hey.
Happy New Year, guys. Glad to be here. It's been a busy start to the new year. I'm involved in my own transfer, as you guys know, so it was a good start to nice start to the window.
I was going to ask that. You made your own transfer in this window. Yeah.
Lured away, Pete. Lured, yeah. Received like a football transfer. Received an approach, received the offer, and the transfer went through.
Wow.
We couldn't afford you, Graeme. We it's loan deals only for us at the moment, so we would have been in there otherwise.
Newcastle all the way, yeah. I'm waiting for my free membership anyway, guys. Number 5 or 6 now, so I'm due my free membership now.
Definitely on the way, that's for sure. But no, look. Well, firstly, congratulations at your transfer, and it's a pleasure to have you on again. And thanks for joining us. And look, there's only really one place to start, because it is really it's been a talking point throughout today, really, and it is sort of Dan Ashworth and his situation. Pete Hall from the iPaper said that Man United want Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell to overhaul their club transfer strategy. Lots of ums and ahs about that situation. Yourself,
something I reported over a month ago. I reported Ashworth and Mitchell.
Yeah, you did, and you also reported on this as well. And you've not only mentioned that that there is a possibility of that move happening. You've also gone one further again by saying that Newcastle may be looking at potentially Brentford's director of football, Phil Giles, as his potential successor. Just in your opinion, just to start off with, Graeme, just talk about sort of what you know with regards to the situation, and then talk to us a little bit about Giles, really, from Brentford and that part of the story that you wrote.
Yeah, the Dan Ashworth situation has been there for quite a couple of months now. Sir Dave Brailsford has been doing a review of Manchester United's footballing operations. He's been doing that behind the scenes, in before his boss, Sir Jim Ratcliffe at Ineos, took a quarter of the club off the Glazers. That's happened now. Sir Dave Brailsford is hugely trusted by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Also a huge friend of Dan Ashworth. They've got together quite a few times from their roles together within the sporting hierarchy in England, from when Dan was at the FA himself and beyond. And we know Sir Dave Brailsford was even in at Newcastle in 2022. Was it 2022 or this summer? Anyway, he was talking to the Newcastle squad at Dan Ashworth's behest, because he was behind all the Tour de France wins, etc., for the Ineos Grenadiers, Team Sky as it was. And so there is a relationship there, and it's something, at Manchester United, what they're putting together is a footballing department, sort of similar to what Chelsea have done, but a lot more concise and a lot more impressive, as it looks like. Jean-Claude Blanc, who was already at NES, is going to come in and be the chief operations, obviously more of the sort of commercial stuff. Sir Dave Brailsford will be there. More the eyes and ears of Sir Jim, is what I'm told, because obviously Sir Jim is based in Monaco, so he's only allowed a certain amount of days in the UK anyway. And then they want a figurehead. They want someone who, more of this David Gill type figure, and that's what Dan Ashworth's becoming. He's a hugely trusted figure in sport. He did a wonderful job at Brighton. But Man United, I think, more impressed, even than his Newcastle, with what he did at the FA, the way he stabilised that ship. He was a figurehead. We didn't know about the controversies because of the work he was doing behind the scenes. And he's done similar at Newcastle, where, yeah, he has been hands-on with the transfers, but, they've got a big transfer team in there. He's just been overseeing the club. And United are impressed by that. And what we're being told, there is a confidence behind the scenes there. Sir Dave Brailsford knows him personally. And clearly, whilst Dan has sort of straight batted a few previous mentions of this, it's not going away. Manchester United think they can get him. And I think Newcastle, from what I'm being told, are fairly, but not open to him leaving, but, they know it's Manchester United. It's one of the biggest jobs in the world. And you've got to roll with the punches. And that's where this Phil Giles thing comes from. They are doing their due diligence. Newcastle aren't going to get caught on the hop. They are looking at other options out there. We saw Bournemouth, Richard Hughes was linked. I'm not sure. I think that's a go, particularly given there is history there with Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall, but it's not all about Eddie Howe, which we'll discuss once again on the show, as we had previously, where I think you guys will be starting to agree with me on that avenue. And so Newcastle are doing the work. Phil Giles is someone who you guys, if those listening don't know, he's a born and bred Geordie. He's Newcastle through and through. Grew up as a Newcastle season ticket holder, but he's been one of the mastermind behind what Brentford have done. He's hugely into analytics. He's one of the most impressive analytical figures in football there is. He's done a wonderful job at Brentford, so it's only sensible if there's a Geordie out there who is one of the best qualified, he would be in the running. They will be obviously looking abroad. I'm told they are looking abroad at who is doing a good job across the continent, across the world. I'm not saying that he's the one and only person looking at. I just know if they have looked at him, they appreciate his work, and they're doing their due diligence if they lose Dan Ashworth. They haven't given up on Dan Ashworth, obviously not. But when Manchester United come calling, it's a very, very big job to turn down, especially now with Sir Jim Ratcliffe there, and it's an attractive job. I read somewhere today, I think it was Craig Hope, and I agree with that, where in some ways he'd have more control at Manchester United than he would at Newcastle, and I agree with that sentiment totally. Where he's going to be given the keys of one of the great football institutions in world football. So it's going to be very hard for Newcastle to fend off, and very hard for them to keep him from going there.
Spot on, Graeme, and appreciate you kind of shedding light from your perspective on this. Boys, I'm going to come to you. Daz, I will ask you just off the bat, what would Dan Ashworth leaving Newcastle and going to Man United mean to you personally, if that was to happen with regards to our club?
Yeah, look, I'd be good at it because I don't want him to go. I don't want to believe this story either. And I know it's as Graeme says, it's been around since October, and it's still not gone away, and no one has shut it down either. So maybe there is something in it, but no, I don't want to see him go. I want us to, like everything, I want us to build this project and grow and want bigger and better things, and eventually free up FFP situation that we can go and sign some of the players we want to sign rather than having to look at loans. But he's there on a project. He's only just getting started. If we were 4 years down the road, then he'll have got us to a certain place. He'll have set the foundations, and then let him move on if so be it, and someone else build on top of that. But it's too early for me to be going. But if he wants to go. I don't want him here if he doesn't want to be here.
No, that's a fair point. I'll get Chris's opinion on this when he comes back, and I think he's having some technical issues. But honestly, for me, and it'd be good to get your opinion on this, Graeme, just from a personal perspective. I think this is massive if Dan Ashworth leaves and goes to Man United. A lot of people in the chat are saying, yeah, he should go. If, like you just said, Daz, if he doesn't want to stay, let him go. A lot are saying, no, Amanda Staveley, Mirdad, they need to PIF, they need to do whatever they can to keep him. Yep, saying, put that comment in the chat. Thank you for that. I just think, I don't think it gives the best light to Newcastle United's regime if for a person that they waited for 6 months to finish their gardening leave, has only really been in the job for about a year, then leaves and goes to a top six rival potentially. Because that's where we want to be. We want to be a rival to those top six. We're not there right now in terms of where our current form is, but we were there last season. That's where we want to be. And Graeme made a very valid point. Man United, although not in a great position, are still seen as the biggest club in England, arguably the biggest club in the world, alongside your Barcelonas and your Real Madrids. And so it would be seen from his position as a step up. But I just think we want the absolute best at this club, and I think we need to do everything we can to keep him at this club, because I think him leaving doesn't look great on the club. That's someone that when we signed him, everybody in the Premier League kind of stood up and took notice. Wow, took him away from Brighton. What are you going to achieve and deliver with him? And then all of a sudden he's just up and leaving to go to Man United. It doesn't look great for us. And I have to say, there was a comment on Twitter when I put something out earlier. I think it was Sid. So big up to Sid for this, because Sid also made a point. And I'll come to you on this, Chris. I want your opinion on this too. It actually doesn't look good on Dan Ashworth either. And Sid made this point. And look, you're shaking your head, Chris. I'll ask you to kind of expand on that. But we've just given our opinions on this, and we'll get Graham's as well. Loads of opinions in the chat, and we love it. We are seeing those, and we're putting them on the screen. Some people for it, against it. What is your opinion on Dan Ashworth? And do you agree with what Sid commented on Twitter earlier to one of my tweets and said, it actually doesn't look good on him either?
Yeah, I mean, I'd understand if he went, because as Graeme said, it's arguably the biggest club in the world, and I get it. I do get it, and obviously if he's working with one of his close friends, it does make sense. But on the other hand, from a business world, it doesn't look great. I mean, you know that yourselves, don't you? If you were to get a new job and then within 6 to 12 months you then leave to go somewhere else to one of your rivals, it just doesn't look very good. Again, I understand it, but for me, I know there's a lot of rumours about it, and the rumours aren't going away, but I would be very surprised if he did leave to go to Man United. I think if Newcastle were in different circumstances, I think if we weren't on the trajectory that we're on, and we didn't have the owners that we have, I think there's probably more likelihood that he would leave. But for me, I personally, I know it's Man United, but I would be very, very surprised if he was to leave, because I think he's got everything that he wants here at Newcastle, and he probably wants to see it through. That's not to say he's not interested, and that's not to say that it won't happen in the future. But I just feel like, you know, the grass isn't always greener, and that let's not you know, hide from the facts here, boys. That's a big rebuild that needs to be done at Manchester United, and they're a good few years off, I would say, challenging in any respect, because the amount of money that they've already put into the club, and yes, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's come in, and yes, he will put money into the club, but have they got the right manager? You know, do they need to upgrade the stadium? There's lots and lots of things that need sorting out at Man United to get them back to where they want to be. Yeah. And I just wonder whether now is the right time for Dan Ashworth to jump ship, because I agree with you, Pete. You know, it wouldn't look great if he was to to duck out of this project and go to Manchester United. I think he's got unfinished work here, Dan Ashworth, and for me, I think he'll be here at least another 2 years. Then maybe, you know, if another opportunity came up, at least he would be able to leave with his head held high and say, well, you know what, I've took them on to a different level, and now I'm moving on. Whereas now, like, we haven't even begun yet; things haven't begun. So I think it wouldn't look great if he left now.
Graeme, I'll come to you on this. David Cook just put a comment just below that one. Guys, yeah, absolutely spot on. I think it's a really good point. Do you think that's part of it? Man United, not maybe scared is maybe not the right word, but maybe sort of worried about Newcastle's trajectory, although we're not in the position we want to be right now in the league, but where we're looking like we are going to get at some point in terms of being up there competing. Do you think it's maybe a process of trying to stabilise this? Because there are other, you know, directors of football, sporting directors out there that they could go for. Honing in and trying to unsettle Dan Ashworth at Newcastle, is that for you something that they're trying to do? And just what are your general thoughts on Dan Ashworth's potential movement, and whether you think it will actually happen?
First, on the conspiracy theory, Pete, no, I think that's absolute tosh. I think it's got nothing to do with where Dan Ashworth is at. I think it's a huge amount. As I laid out, he's a close friend of Sir Dave Brailsford, who is one of the decision makers in this process. I don't think Dan Ashworth would consider it if he wasn't going to be possibly working with someone who he trusts, a close friend of his, who is obviously telling him about the project.
Oh, we lost him for a second.
I think Newcastle are unfortunate that that Sir Dave Brailsford's involved here. If it wasn't him, if the Qataris had taken over at Manchester United, I don't think we'd be talking about it. I really don't. But because Sir Dave Brailsford is involved, we know he's a very close friend. I think that's it. In terms of Dan Ashworth's future, it's a fact Newcastle have not batted this away. They really haven't, guys. It's been good. As I said, I first reported in October. There's been nothing coming back from Newcastle. They know they can't stop him, really. And Piff are doing the homework on other options. Newcastle would argue that they were bringing in someone else anyway. With Ashworth, I've heard that a strong number 2 as well was being looked at, so that is possible. And I think it's more, from what we're hearing, there's a real chance this happens, guys. I really do think that now that they're in there. I think that Ashworth can see the plans. And as I alluded to, and I agree, I think there is the argument that he would have more power at Manchester United than what he's got now at Newcastle. And United are a huge lure. I wouldn't make it guaranteed that he goes, but I think it's more than 50% likely that he goes now.
Okay. Well, no, great to get your thoughts on that. Look, I personally think that he'll stay. I think he'll stay. I think he should stay. He's got so much more of this project left to achieve. I think, Chris, you made a really, really good point, and I agree with it. At least another couple of years to really see this project through, to overhaul this squad that still needs to be overhauled. And this is part of our next conversation about maybe not necessarily just this month, but beyond that, in overhauling this squad. And I just think potentially that needs to happen. But Look, loads of comments, loads of opinions all over the place. Some agree, some disagree. This is why we love doing what we do on this channel. And thank you all for your comments in the chat as ready. 180 in the chat. Click those likes. There should be 180 likes like that. And thank you for supporting us. And look, we'll get on to the next point, Graeme, because we've talked about this, myself, Chris, Daz, like we've said for weeks now, we have to sign players in January. Like with the injuries and everything that we've gone through so far this season, you would have seen it, Graeme. You would have known the difficulties we've had, and we're in a difficult position. From what you know, and we'll talk about individual players in a second, we'll throw players out there to you. Do you think Newcastle United are actively looking at bringing in 1, 2, maybe 3 players in this window?
Yeah, they are. They are looking. I think ideally they'd like 3. They don't think they're going to get 3. They're sounding quite pessimistic behind the scenes. You know, obviously we'll be starting or getting soon onto Calvin Phillips, and we'll discuss that. But FFP wise, squad wise, they're not sounding that hopeful. Yeah, they were saying similar things last time when they went on to sign Gordon, but I'd say they're sounding less hopeful now than what they were even last January. I think they'll get 2 in, but likely loan. So the very best loan with an obligation. But it's going to be loan deals coming in, guys. You know, it really is. Newcastle are they not telling porcupines, but are they playing it down? I don't think they are. They're not making it up. You know, they cut the cloth accordingly. If what can be guaranteed, and you look at it from do they try and push this the FFP margins to the extreme? If you do spend 30, 40, 50 million in January, what does that guarantee? Nothing in football, we know that. It's a really tough one. I suspect you'll get another domestic loan, because Lewis Hall will still be there, so you're bringing another domestic loan, which I suspect will be Calvin Phillips personally, and the foreign loans obviously can do as many. Will you go to Saudi Arabia? If you do get an extra 2 or 3, I wouldn't rule out a pro league loan at all. I still think as we go through January, depends what happens. Let's keep an eye on that. It's an interesting one, but I think at best you'll get 3 in. I think most likely 2, but possibly don't be surprised if it's only 1.
Interesting. Chris, you talked about something the other day which I thought was really, really interesting. And the reason why I asked this first about what Graeme thinks might happen in this window. I'm not going to lie, Graeme. I feel positive that you've mentioned that they are looking for 3, because I'm keeping that in mind. I've had that in mind for a while, that I think we do need 2 or 3 players to come in, and I'm hoping that does materialise, whether they're confident about it now or not. But Chris, you mentioned something about what that might look like to this man Eddie Howe if we don't get some players in. Like, just talk, if you want to, just talk to Graeme a little bit about that, about what that might look like, particularly with the pressure on him at the moment with getting results and the performances not being great. Lost 7 and 8 at the moment. We're massive game on Saturday. What potentially might that look like, in your opinion, Chris, if we don't get backed, or he doesn't get backed in January?
Yeah, I mean, when we were speaking the other night, Graeme, we were saying, well, I was saying that, in my opinion, you know, this is the time to get behind Eddie Howe. And I know that when you last came on, you said, you know, everything was all rosy in the garden, wasn't it? And we were saying, you know, Eddie Howe for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years now. Things have changed a little bit, and Eddie's under a little bit of pressure.
I think, Chris, if I said that Eddie Howe was under huge pressure to get results, and Piff, no matter what Newcastle fan base think of Piff, they're not here just to please the Geordie nation. They're here to win.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we've now found, Eddie's found himself in that position now because obviously, as Pete rightly said, who's 7 defeats out of the last 8. And the thing I said, Graeme, the other day was that I know obviously we've got to be very mindful of FFP, and I do understand, that there are constraints, etc. But for me, I don't know, I was a bit hesitant when we were talking about possibly bringing in one, maybe a loan, something like that. And I'm thinking, surely now, if you've got the full back and if the board are fully behind the manager, surely now is the time where you say, right, go and get those 1 or 2 players that you need, or possibly 2 or 3. Because ultimately, we've got some very tough fixtures in January, as we know. We've got Man City at home, and then we've got Aston Villa away, and then sandwich in between that as well. We've got the FA Cup game, obviously, on Saturday against Sunderland, and I just feel like there's still an opportunity for us to have a decent season. Like, I still think with the European places are still very much up for grabs. And what I asked the boys, and obviously the people watching the show as well, was that is the owners not backing Eddie Howe and not giving him those 1, 2, 3, 4 players that he so desperately needs? And yes, we've got so many injuries, so we can't overload the squad, but we do need some bodies through the door. Is that the owners basically keeping the powder dry for the summer? Is that the owners not putting the trust in Eddie Howe and trying to keep that pot of money for potentially a new manager in the summer? Or is it not? Is that not the case? Or do you think it's just the fact that things are so tight?
I don't really think they're keeping the powder dry for another manager or whatever like that, or for the summer. Yeah, as we said from when we first spoke about PIF, guys, the effort, for whatever reasons, I do think it's unfair. It shouldn't be. The effort are keeping a closer eye on Newcastle than any other club in the league, massively. And unfortunately for Newcastle, we've seen the Everton penalty. We've seen Man City battling their possible penalty. We've seen Nottingham Forest getting very close to the edge, and these point deductions are going to become increasingly more likely in the Premier League going forward. So Newcastle are just making sure they're not pushing up against the wire. They know what they've got to do, and yeah, they have the summer in mind. But Newcastle's still got quite an inflated squad. We know that, guys, haven't we? Behind the scenes, and it's a lot of people from the outside, not being Newcastle. If you weren't a Newcastle fan, you wouldn't realise how big this Newcastle squad is. And there's some really, although we're not talking players on £300,000 a week, there's a lot of players on bloated wages in this squad, and there is still quite a few. There's still a lot of work to be done behind the scenes on that. And it's a really tough one. Yeah, I feel for Eddie. He clearly wants some players in, and it's a reason why Calvin Phillips isn't through the door yet, because that Newcastle are not going to be bowed by Manchester City in this. Not going to be. It's going to agree to any old deal. Obviously, City probably think they've got Newcastle over a barrel to a certain extent, which they haven't quite got them over a barrel, but yeah, they're certainly starting to push Newcastle that way. It's a really tough one, guys. It is. If PIF could spend £200 million in this window, they would, but they're just not able to, unfortunately, because there's such a microscope from the rest of the Premier League and all the other clubs as well.
But what seems to be the sticking point with regards to that? Because TalkSport mentioned a week or so ago that they wouldn't block the move for Calvin Phillips, and then all of a sudden we're now seeing that there's between a £5 and £7 million loan fee that's on there. What is there anything else that's kind of causing this deal to not go ahead? Because I'll be honest, and I think boys, Chris, Daz, you think the same as well, is that this has been talked about for weeks now. We're going back into probably November. This has been talked about. It looked like a short thing. How come it's not been done already?
Well, Calvin Phillips himself was giving himself till Christmas to see what happened at City, so it was never going to get done before then, even though Newcastle were interested. As it's transpired, he knows he's not getting in the team. City, there's no need for City to give Newcastle a friendly deal in the first week in January, guys. Why should City? If they can get as much out of Newcastle now as they can, then do it. I think it's one that will rumble on for a few weeks. We'll probably get into the second half of January and then see where we are. City obviously hoping that Newcastle get even more desperate, and then they might very well end up agreeing to the current terms or paying more. Then again, if Newcastle have a good January, then may force City's hand the other way. It's my belief that Calvin Phillips does want to come to Newcastle. I've been told that. It would give him a chance to live in. He's got a base near Wetherby, so he could even commute technically every day. I think everything. Slot box. If he was a player that Newcastle liked previously, it was only the huge money from City in the first place that probably stopped him going to Newcastle at that point. It's one of those tipping points. I think it will get done. I still think it will go to Newcastle, but there's a lot of, as we see in January, there's a reason that a lot of deals get done in the last 2 weeks of the window, because they're going to see, if Newcastle lose these games, lose to Sunderland, they might just then go to City and say, look, right, we'll pay whatever you want, obligation, because it's probably going to be an obligation anyway, and the player will want that as well, and Newcastle will as well. It just depends. He's on a lot of money. He costs a lot of money. It's not that easy a deal to do, because I do think Newcastle like the player that much that it would be with an obligation or some sort of mandatory to make him part of the squad. Because I think Eddie or whoever, the powers that be in Newcastle do see him as a long-term signing, which I think he would be. He'd be coming to Newcastle and be a good servant to you. So it's a difficult one. Yeah, we've got to see how this plays out. But that's, with these window guys, we've got to see where teams are. The early deals, it's only teams who are in desperate measures, really. Like Tottenham desperately need a centre-half. That's why they're trying to do one early. But they're still playing around, looking at different options, different prices. Newcastle want this midfielder. There's a perfect one there in Phillips. So I don't think there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction, go to the continent and sign someone who isn't as good or isn't as good a fit as someone like Calvin Phillips. So, I think that's where we are with him, and that's the reason why we're saying this. City probably are happy to wait. City can see out till the last day in January if they want to. Obviously, as Newcastle fans, you don't want them to, but let's see how things go. It's Newcastle. We are such a hard team to predict now. We don't know. You could lose your next 4 games. You could win them, but that will have a major bearing on what you do with the transfers, not just Phillips.
Daz, I'll ask you, and people put your comments in the chat as well if you what you feel about this one. Calvin Phillips, they're talking about £7.5 million loan fee. Would you pay it to get him in the door?
Yeah, no. Look, I've said all along that I wouldn't like us to go out and buy him outright. We can't anyway. But taking him on loan, see how he does, see how he fits in. It's going to take him a while to get up to speed. But to answer your question, I think there's a bit of brinkmanship there. It's going to, as Graeme saying, it's going to drag on. Newcastle don't want to pay too much. City don't want to let him go for too little. There's Fulham and was it Crystal Palace as well, where names were thrown into the mix. And also the thing is, like, what if Rodri got injured in the next match for City? Then that might change the situation with Phillips. So it all kind of needs to play out a bit. Mid to late January, I think it'll get done, and a lot of as Graeme said, a lot of the deals will get done then. And I think Eddie Howe as well, and someone put it in the chat that he's waiting on what players are back, and if anything else tweaks will change his mind and things.
It'd be an interesting one. For me, I'd pay it. I'd pay it. But I think we'd
straight up. You wouldn't even haggle.
It'll come off the overall fee, though. If you're paying 7-10 million down, you do it with a view to that coming off the overall fee anyway. So,
yeah. But what if we don't want him then? What if he gets injured for us and he's out for a long time? Then we're stuck with that fee.
No, but Calvin Phillips has been signed as a long-term player. He's an England national, a good player. He'll be a good, loyal servant for a lot of years. So I don't think you sign him as a short-term measure anyway. Obviously, whether he's or not is a different issue, but. I think he'd be coming in as a long-term piece of this jigsaw for Newcastle. So yeah, I think it's just how much the overall deal would be, and there's a lot of these deals can be very complicated. They paid a lot of money for him. They want to get back as much as they can, and I think they're the little ones. Whether if Newcastle were just taking him for 6 months, it'd probably be done already. But they're not looking to just take him for 6 months. That's part of the issue, really.
There's another angle then on this, and if you half the people on Twitter or wherever chat could be in, they ask the question: does Eddie actually want a dedicated number 6? That's the question, and it's who knows. There's an awful lot of ifs,
But
buts, and maybes.
he's Calvin Phillips. I know you got. He did do that role at Newcastle, but he is more than that. He's a very, very good midfielder. I saw a lot of him at Leeds. He is someone who can bring the dressing room together. He's an English lad. He's passionate. He's more than that. I think he'd fit like hand in glove here. You know, yes, he does sit there and sweep, but don't think of him more of more of him in that Declan Rice role, strolling through the gaps at St James's, like he used to do at Ellen Road. You know, he's been limited at City, but think back to the player he was in that last season at Leeds. He was tremendous. There's a reason he signed for Man City. And I think if you think back to that sort of player, him next to Bruno and Tonali next season would be pretty mouthwatering.
Yeah. You've sold it, Graeme. You've sold it.
Sold. Yeah.
I still want to haggle.
Yeah.
You want to see me in the markets and holidays haggling?
I think my wife has done me over. She's made me spendy, so I'm like, I don't care. I want it. Double down, done deal. But no, it's going to be an interesting one. You're right, Graeme. He's a talented boy. He has had those injury concerns, but to be fair, he hasn't had those injury concerns for at least a year with Man City because he just hasn't played. So he's been fit and training, but he's just not played regular. So
and his mentality, guys, when you think what he's been through at City, the mentality. I knew the people who look after Calvin, and his temperament is fantastic. He's a northerner. He ticks so many boxes for Newcastle. He really does, and the way he hasn't spat his dummy out here, and he's training really hard day in day out. He's just not a pet player, unfortunately, and he's not the first player like that. He's not the first good player who doesn't fit in. He won't be the last. And I just think he's a good fit for Newcastle in many ways. I think he's an Eddie Howe type player. He'd fit into the squad, and there's no danger that Eddie Howe does say that. I mean, he wants him because he knows what a good character he is.
Let's wait and see. We've not looked at the factor as well before we move on that we play Man City in our next Premier League game. So are they waiting for that game to finish before they then do the transaction? It may not be an issue, may not be a factor, could well be a factor. Let's wait and see. But look, one thing
Peter, unfortunately for you, I don't think Man City see you as I think the fact that Man City don't see you as a rival anymore is helping.
Oh no, I don't think it's about that. I just think it's about the fact that even for I think it's probably more for Newcastle. I think that there's no point they might think there's no point getting him yet. Let's observe the situation because he can't even play against Man City because he'll be on loan. Let's wait and observe the situation. Let's see what our injuries are like. Let's wait until we play Man City and then evaluate the squad then, and then maybe pick him up. I was thinking more of Newcastle's perspective. Not, of course, Man City, they're probably going to win their 4th league in a row this season. They won't be overly worried about us until they come to St James's Park. I think they'll be worried then. But let's wait and see.
I don't think they'll be worried, Pete.
Would you say that? We drew 3-3 with them last season. We gave them a right good game. I was speaking to a few Man City fans actually recently, and they are worried about this fixture.
And the League Cup.
And yeah, we beat them. Exactly. We beat them in the League Cup with a pretty much fully strength squad. So let's wait and see.
I'll talk League Cup if you want. I'm looking forward to our semi-final next week. The Northeast most successful team this century is ready for our semi-final next week.
Ding 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 ding. We knew that was going to be mentioned at some point. We knew it. Yeah, we wish we were the opposition. That's for sure. It would be a very different conversation if that was the case. But let's move on from League Cup right now. Let's not talk about League Cup. Let's talk about attacking players, boys. I think there's been a conversation around with Newcastle fans that attacking players are something that we need to invest in, and we've been linked with a number of players recently, and we won't kind of hone in on them as such. We've had the likes of Dom Solanke being linked with us, £45 million. We don't have to talk about it in detail. We've got Jonathan David, who's a talented player at Lille that's been linked with us as well. But and there's a number of people that are saying that striker is someone that's needed. With the situation with Callum Wilson, he's now out the rest of January now. And I think a lot of Newcastle fans are beginning to get a little bit frustrated with that. And so I know you did a piece on a potential link with a striker, Graeme. If you want to kind of just elaborate on what your thoughts are with this, with a player that we've been linked with previously in Benjamin Sesko, long-term target from Newcastle as well as other clubs as well, and is open to a Premier League move in January. Just kind of enlighten us on that situation and what you know with Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah, as we know, guys, he's a player who Newcastle looked at way back in the day, it seems, doesn't it, when we were first talking about Benjamin Sesko a long time ago. Heavily scouted him, and then he agreed his move to RB Leipzig from a sister club in Austria. Now, it's fascinating that he just hasn't had any game time, Sesko. And now this isn't particularly down to him. It's down to their other summer signing, Openda, who is just being absolutely on fire. Lewis Openda is, 11 goals in 16 games. He looks like one of the best strikers in Europe at the minute, And Sesko especially is thinking ahead to the Euros. It's the same group as England. Let's not forget that, guys, in the summer. He's a hugely talented player, and a lot of people long thought he'd be better suited to England. And his name's come up. His name's been mentioned to the interested parties, like some Manchester United who were looking at him before Hoyland as well, and Newcastle. And he is possibly available. It would have to be a deal that could go down, so it would maybe a loan with a huge option, because they only paid just I think around 25 million for him, so they got him at a bargain price in the first place. He's a tremendous player. I don't think it's for January. But it is possible there for some if they really did want to do it, is my understanding. But it's an interesting one. Newcastle, if it were to go down the forward route, I'm told that it won't be a striker. It's highly unlikely at this stage, depending on who comes back. But Sesko is one to know. It's one to like. He's on the list. If he was available, hey, they're likely to be in the mix. Don't say it happening at this moment in time, guys. I think a straightforward loan elsewhere. Another one of our old favourites will probably come on to Mr. Ekateki at some point, Pete. But there's a few options out there. The problem with Sesko, and it's not a problem because he plays centrally, and then Isaac in theory could play out wide. We've seen him play wide left on a few occasions, haven't we? So there is that option for Newcastle. I think if they did go for a striker, testing the water for Sesko would be one of the best options to have. As said, I don't see them bringing the forward in January. I really don't.
There's a few people that you've answered their question to, because a few people came straight back with, how much would he cost? But, with the loan fee, you talked about Openda, who is, like you said, having a great season.
I'm surprised you're not asking for Openda, Pete. You were asking for Bonifacio last time I was on. I'm surprised you're not wanting. I'm surprised you're not wanting Openda signing.
Well, you know what? If Leverkusen weren't kind of on a title tilt right now, I'd be asking you again. But there's no way, and he's gone. I think the African Cup of Nations anyway, so he's away for at least a month. But I just think with that Benjamin Sesko situation, like he's going to want to play regular football, and it goes back to the question, Daz. I'll come to you. Is there a need to get a third striker in it, an alternative striker? We've talked about this so many times. So yes. You may be repeating what you're going to say, but is there a need to get a third striker in? 20 years old, got huge pedigree, as Graeme Bailey's talked about. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, most definitely. I think we need a third striker, and as I said before, it would push Wilson down to third spot going into next season. Look, he's going to miss another couple of games as it is, and with Isak being number one, and someone that is willing to kind of share the responsibilities with Isak, because Isak can't play every game. He's not the same player when he has to play every game as he's had to do in the past. And Sesko is we about a month ago, Pete, we talked about it, and my strikers were Sesko and another guy, Marcus Leonardo, who a few of the guys in the chat, including Travoy here, and as I mentioned at the start of the show, himself and a couple of lads were chatting on Twitter today about Marcus Leonardo, who's gone to Benfica, or is on his way to Benfica for €18 million. So that we should be all over that, in my opinion.
You were never. If it makes you feel any better, Daz, I'm told that you were never in for him. So if that makes you feel better, West Ham, on the other hand, were massively in for him, but they've missed out. Which you can find the story on Twitter that I've done tonight. But yeah, if it makes you feel any better, Daz, you weren't in the reckoning for him, but you should have been. I agree with you. You should have been.
That's surprising. And Daz,
in what way? But what you can't even say that though, Pete. You can't offer him first team football. So what? Why would he join you over Benfica?
No, that's a fair point. Brazilians, I think I put it in our chat today that they tend to like to prefer to go to like Spain or Portugal and play there as a priority, unless they're coming in and being first choice. But he's still really young, and let's be honest, like.
But he's got experience. The difference with him, he had first team experience with him as well, Pete. He had a full season. He's got a lot of first team games under his belt, which a lot of these Brazilians sometimes are untested. But as I'm sure Daz knows, he had a lot of first team experience at Santos. And a lot of scouts thought he was Premier League bound because of his physical nature.
To me, he dovetailed with Isaac, and even in games where we go behind, bring him on then. Sorry, this is what I do in Football Manager. So that's what, and I got him to Newcastle, by the way. But
the club made their move. The club made their striker move by giving Callum Wilson his new contract. So they'd already made their striker move. Whether judging by your faces, you can tell whether that was right or not. So the club made their decision. Now they made the bed. Now they've got to line it.
No.
So we have to make do with what we have this for the rest of the season, and in the summer reevaluate.
Oh yeah, totally. In the summer, that's a different kettle of fish, isn't it, Dad? But I think they probably in conversation with Eddie thought they could get through with generally Isaac and Wilson. Always a risk, especially with the European campaigns and the cups. It was always going to be a risk.
If you're watching from Saudi, give Callum Wilson a call. Get him over there. He's in Dubai. Get him over there. Give him a nice. I thought you were
going to be on the phone to Mitro, but I don't think he'd be. I hope you all sent your thank you cards to Rafa Benitez as well for getting rid of Rafa and Tony so early. I hope you all sent him a Christmas card saying thank you for that, Rafa, for spoiling our future.
Rafa's on the hit list now.
He always was terrible manager. Awful for Newcastle.
Oh my god!
You look who are two of the most wanted in the last 12 months. Two of the most wanted strikers in Europe have been Alexander Mitrovic and Ivan Toney. How much did combined? How much did Rafa sell them for? Was it probably less than 3 million combined?
They were never going to reach their potential though at Newcastle. Like Ivan Toney had to leave to be able to achieve what he's doing now. And to be fair, he's admitted that in more than one interview that
Mitro, one of the best forwards I've ever seen. He was capable of doing that at Newcastle. Mitro should have been Newcastle's number 9. He was made for it. Made for that.
He didn't work hard enough off the ball though. That was his big problem. He started to do it in his second or third season at Fulham when he was in the Premier League. But
when he had a good manager, man.
Yeah, well, you could argue that, but look, that was when he was 26, 27. Like it took him till later on in his 20s to realise that actually you can't just have everything come to you. You've got to actually work for it. And Benitez wanted workers. He didn't want just a target man. And to be fair, it's kind of been proven from that perspective that actually, the fact that he wasn't working off the ball was part of his problem, because when he did start to do that, then you saw him perform in the Premier League at that level. And then you saw Mitrovic being talked about as a really good Premier League striker, but only when he started working off the ball. And I think the season before he left, when he had a really good season, he even said he's been training harder for that season in terms of running more off the ball. So
the second half of the season, you got rid of him, Pete. He scored 12 in 17. That same season, Newcastle got rid of him.
We did get a good price from him, though. We did get a good price. We got a good price for him. I think I'm sure it was rising to 27 million.
Yeah. It's a shame we didn't get him. We almost got him.
Graeme, can I just check my card here? The Bailey bingo. I think I'm just one off the jackpot. Just waiting on one.
I did just look at Alan. I did look at.
There's time yet.
I did look at Alan St-Maximin recently to see how he's doing in Saudi Pro. He has achieved 8 assists this season, which I'm sure surprised everyone in the Northeast.
Don't do it. I'm just looking down right now. Like, don't. I'm composed at this moment in time. We'll leave it. We'll leave that one there, and we'll talk about somebody.
But in terms, can I just mention one name who I'm not sure he's on your list, Pete. Yeah. One forward to look out for, who you may get in, and it's a shame that he's been injured. But Yakuba Minte at on loan at Feyenoord. Keep an eye on him. He may well be not the saviour, but wouldn't be surprised if he's back in Newcastle. If he's in the Newcastle shirt in January.
What, you think they'll call him back?
There's a chance. He's had an exceptional start. He's had an exceptional start to the season. He's looked good. He's played in forward roles. He's played quite advanced. I think he's progressed quicker than Newcastle thought he would. But he's played. You know, ideally they'd like to keep him there, but needs must sometimes. So keep an eye. He's a very good player. So keep an eye on him. If it gets the push to pull, wouldn't surprise me if they make that decision.
Do you think, Graeme, that will depend on whether we bring in a forward option? So if we don't bring in a forward option, could it be that we recall Minter?
I think it more depends on how the January goes, Chris, and you know, you stay in the FA Cup. Where do we go from here? I think it depends on his fitness, because I think he's been overcoming his own injury recently. He started, and so I think it's a decision that they haven't made yet. Really, I think he's over here, or he's either was over here, or he's coming over here. I think was the plan. To have a bit of treatment and then to have a look at it and probably assess it. They'll speak to him as well. Does he want to come over in January, or does he want to wait till summer to do it? There'll be a lot of conversations going on, you know, because they won't want him to come over and spit his dummy out saying I want to finish in Holland, because he's having a very good season there. So, but it's what I'm told. I'm told he is a player under discussion by the Newcastle hierarchy, and it's a possibility.
Yeah, to coin a phrase, said I think you might be going to the African Cup of Nations. I think he might have been called up, but you're right. He could well be over here to be assessed before he goes over there. Obviously, we're not. If we call him back, it's not just for January. It'll be for the remainder of the season. Which, if he was to be called back, he'd still play probably a huge part. And you know, there's an argument that right hand side needs to be improved. He's still raw. But he's shown ability this season on loan. So let's wait and see. For me, I'd want more, maybe of a ready-made player. Another player that one or two have mentioned in the chat, and I think we'll just throw some names at you now, just on links and certain things. As well, and this is a name we didn't talk about previously, but a few people have mentioned it. Is one of Chris's favourites, Ryan Cherki. Now it does say in that link that Aston Villa are one of a number of clubs interested. Leon are not having a great season. Ryan Cherki has had some issues during this season, and there has been talks that he is looking for a way out of Leon. I'm not saying there are direct links there and that there's anything to be said on that, but would he be like a good option for Newcastle to sign in this window?
Well, he's a mercurial player. He's an interesting talent. You know, Chelsea have liked him a lot. Chelsea looked at him very closely in the summer. He can play at number 10 role. He can fleet around. He can play anywhere across the front. He's that player who can unlock defenses, which I still think Newcastle are short of. I really do. I still think he's short of that player. I said it from that first home game last season when you played Nottingham Forest, that Fabian Schär long range effort. I said it even that from that time on. You're still missing that player who can, that Paqueta type player that deliver that killer ball, that unlock defenses. I I don't see him being. I don't see Ryan Cherky being an Eddie Howe player in any way, shape, or form. I really don't. I think he's a good player. He's a talented player, but a huge risk.
Chris,
Kids are crying now, Graeme.
I'd agree.
I think he's one who. I think there'll be a few red flags going on when they're doing the background checks on him. I think there'll be a few red flags.
Yeah. I think he's a great player, but I like Graeme. I can't see him being Eddie Howe.
I think there's a reason why he's a cut price deal. He's had some issues with Lyon. They're right down there in the league, or lower than they'd have expected to be this season. Been in a relegation battle for the most of this season, and they're in a position where he might be the one that they want to cut their ties with early on. There's no doubt he'll end up being the top player, but I think is that the player that you'd want right now? But a few people have mentioned Rooney Badaji. He's a player that I would love. Right winger, young lad. You could probably get him on a cheaper deal if you were to sign him permanently. He is definitely a player, and a player that we talked about, another striker, Graeme. We talked about Joshua Zirkzee. He is a talented boy. They talk about him in a similar mold to Alexander Isak. And actually, as I was saying we were talking before the show, we were kind of like, he's had a similar trajectory to Alexander Isak because he kind of, he started at Bayern Munich in their sort of reserves, didn't really get an opportunity at Bayern Munich, and then has gone to Genoa in Italy and really hit the ground running. He's playing some fantastic football this season. And obviously the link from Ollie, friend of the channel, talked about Dominic Solanke in the same light as that. But Joshua Zirkzee, it's going to take a little bit of money to get him in, and it might not be this month. But Joshua Zirkzee, a talented boy.
He's a talented boy. You won't be seeing him in Newcastle shirt anytime soon. So unfortunately for you,
why do this to me?
Pete, let's put any forward you put on this pit, any forward you put up to me in the next half an hour, you're not going to be signing. Okay, if you want to stop the misery, you're not going to be signing any striker who costs any sort of money. Okay, there we go. Put a picture of Minty up. You might sign him. In
the summer, though. In the summer, do you have Go on, Daz.
Sorry, Pete. I was just going to say, Graeme, do you have a Middlesbrough jersey with this outfit as well? No, you're all spoiling the party.
Okay, yeah, you're going to sign Boniface and Zirkzee. Congratulations, you're going to finish top 4. I can sit here and lie to you if you want, boys. Zirkzee is a good player. Bayern Munich are the only team. They've got an option on him to bring him back as well, though. That's the thing with Zirkzee. Understand they've got an option. They'll bring him back. He's never showed any willingness to come to England, which would be a real warning sign to me. Dominic Solanke, I could see that in the future, possibly in a swap deal with Callum Wilson. If you want Dominic Solanke, I'd offer Callum Wilson to Bournemouth now, send him back there. But Dominic Solanke, what you've got to do now, guys, is when you want, and I question Pete wanting a striker. If you're going to spend big money on players now, you need to improve your 1-11. Why should PIF spend 30-40 million pounds on a player who won't get in your 1-11 when Harvey Barnes is back and fit, etc., and Anthony Gordon's firing and Isaac's up there? What forward can you sign in Europe that wouldn't cost 50-60 million to get in that starting 11? It's not going to happen because of that reason for me. I don't think you're really lacking striker wise. Yes, you've got injuries, but every club in Europe has injuries, guys. And I think Barnes will be back pretty soon. Newcastle hope. You got Gordon there, but you can't be spending huge amounts of money on what would intrinsically be a backup forward. And you will get this problem now going forward. You'll see it. And Tottenham always had this problem for years and years, if you remember, guys. Trying to sign a backup to Harry Kane. The Victor Janssens as well. Trying to sign Newcastle, trying to sell a striker to them. Say, well, where's Alexander Isak going to play? Oh, well, yeah, there's him. There's Harvey Barnes, who you hope will come good, which I fully believe he will. There's Anthony Gordon, one of the best English players in the Premier League this season. So it's a tough sell. You're gonna have to go down the young route or do something like that. But someone like a Xerxes, no, it's not on the menu. That one.
Yeah, but you're forgetting we've been brought up in the Kevin Keegan era, who was bringing strikers in left, right, and centre, and get too excited.
And the one thing I'll say to all of you guys is there is still a concern with Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes, with his foot injury, he's already had one setback, and they've given him a month to get fit. If it goes again, they're going to need to give him surgery, and if he has surgery, he's out for the season. That's the serious nature of that type of injury, because the bone that he's broken his foot is one that takes quite a long time to recover. So there's awkward injuries that if you have surgery, you're probably not going to see him for the rest of the season. And so,
that's why I think the Minte conversation comes in, because he can play that wide, he can do that, and I think. I know you won't like me saying this. I think Minte, could come and do a better job than Miggy. Miggy's a great squad player, but you don't want him playing week in, week out, and that's part of the problem.
Weekly, Graeme. Weekly.
I think Minte. I think someone like the Barnes situation will have a big impact on Minte's future, Pete. I do agree with that.
Yeah, are you going to put that sort of pressure on Minte though? Young lad.
He's a Newcastle player. He's a Newcastle United player already, Pete. What have you signed him for? Sit in the stands and watch you on TV. What have you signed him for?
No, I get that, but obviously we've signed him with the view to develop him.
You signed him with a view to. You've signed him with a view to becoming the first team player at Newcastle United. He's proved at Feyenoord he can be that.
I'm not sure they'd throw him into the. Look, if they do and he's successful, we would love every second of that. But I'm just not sure. Like we could go on to, and actually brings us nicely onto the Lewis Hall situation, because Lewis Hall is a young lad, just turned 19 years old. The reports in the Telegraph, and I know you talked about it as well, Graeme, with us before we went live, to stay at Newcastle United. So it looks like that deal. That loan deal is going to be made permanent and it's going to be done. But it's again that Eddie Howe this season hasn't thrown him in when so many Newcastle United fans have gone, play him. We're not seeing him. Play him, give him the minutes, give him the games. I just think that with Minter in an attacking position, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong in the play. They throw him in and he absolutely smashes it. But it just doesn't seem like Eddie Howe's doing that at the moment with some of his young players. The same with Limplemento, but it's a fair point in what you're saying. But obviously with Lewis Hall, it looks like it's a done deal.
Yeah. There's no way out. I think it was there were certain fees and other things involved and obligations. But it is an obligation he will sign, and he's a terrific young player. As you say, as you were attesting to about Minte, Pete, I think the same thing for Lewis Hall. How ready is he for Premier League football? We saw him at Chelsea. What did he play at Chelsea? Literally a handful of Premier League games. I think there's a reason clearly that Eddie doesn't think he's ready yet. So you have to go with Eddie on this. There's been so many times where for me, Kieran Trippier, he needs 2 weeks off anyway. But the chance to play Livramento right, Lewis Hall left has been there. But clearly, they obviously think he's not quite ready. Maybe in this system, or there's something not quite there. Obviously, they rate him as a player, but as you say, as we say, sometimes it can take a little while for these players to settle in. And he's a young lad. He's come from the capital up to Newcastle, the northeast. Not always easy for them to settle. We don't know. It's just, I think it's a bit of an unfortunate circumstance where the pressure is growing on him to play. Will we see? I think it'd be telling if we don't see him play against Sunderland. When are you going to see him? So it'd be interesting to see if he features in that game. If he doesn't, then I think this whole season is going to be one of watching merely from the bench.
Yeah. Couple of things before we get to questions, because I think there's a few questions in the chat as well on that. Just a couple of points on outgoings. Isaac Hayden was linked with a move to another club. They talked about potentially in Football Insider terminating the deal. Doesn't look like that's happened, but the loan deal has been terminated. Looks like it's coming back to Newcastle and being loaned out. Is there any kind of news coming from your way in which he's going to go out to?
I've been told likely top of Championship. I think there is a bit of interest there from lower in the Premier League. From the Burnleys of this world, from Sheffield United, maybe permanent deals. Even the Luton, but obviously they've already got 2 loan players, so they couldn't loan him again. Newcastle. This isn't going to cost Newcastle anything. They hope to make money on it, if anything. He's still got 2 years left on his deal, staggeringly. I think it just means that Newcastle, like Standard Liège, wouldn't have been covering anywhere near his wages. So I think the likelihood is he's come back, and the team who are taking him will probably cover more of his wages, thus saving Newcastle quite a chunk of money.
Yeah,
because with these deals as well, guys, when a player signs, especially someone like Hayden on a 6-year deal, whatever it was, the incremental pay rises, it's really he's going to be a lot more money now than when he first started signing that contract.
Yeah.
Anything with goalkeepers, Graeme? One that we'd not spoken to you previously, but obviously with Pope being out for 5 months, Dubravka coming in, he had a fantastic game against Liverpool, but before that, he'd had a number of shockers, and there was a call that we had to get a goalkeeper. Are you hearing anything goalkeeper related? We've been linked with the likes of Georgian young wizard, Georgian Mamadashvili.
Good. I hadn't seen that, but yeah, it's good for a laugh. He's one. He's one of the best goalkeepers in Europe, Mamadashvili. You may as well put
How much do you think it would cost, Graeme? How much do you think it would cost?
Mamadashvili, you wouldn't get him for less than 40 million. He's one of the most wanted keepers in Europe, Pete. Every major club on the planet knows about him. He's one of the more. Him along with the boy Costa at Porto. They're the 2 best young keepers in Europe. Yeah. They're who everybody wants. And I'm not saying you couldn't sign him, but I think if Newcastle go out and spend £40 million on a goalkeeper this summer, I think it'd be on Aaron Ramsdale.
Really? Ahead of Mamadashvili?
I think Newcastle, if they spend that money on a goalkeeper, it will not be on Mamadashvili. It would be on.
They wouldn't take the gamble and not having Premier League experience. Is that what you're kind of alluding to there?
I just think he might have bigger options. Mamadashvili.
Interesting.
He's not. I say he's huge. Let's see what the keeper situation is an interesting one. I don't think he'll do anything in January. I think Dubravka is more than capable. I personally don't think Nick Pope. I don't think Nick Pope was having a great season. I must admit, I think it was his worst season since he's been at the club. I don't think Dubravka coming in is a massive downgrade in the slightest from the form that Pope was showing.
You're winding me up. You're doing this on he was the highest.
So Dubravka coming in is that's led to a downturn in Newcastle's form, is it, Pete?
Yeah. 100%. Because when Nick Pope was in the team, right. When Nick Pope was in the team, Graeme.
Well, we've solved all Newcastle's problems. Let's just sign a goalkeeper and everything's back to normal. There we go.
Yay!
Why are we talking strikers, Pete? Just sign a goalkeeper and we're done.
Goalkeepers that can also act as a striker. I like it.
Right. Nick Pope had 5 clean sheets to his name. As well as that, we had the best defensive record equal to, I believe, Arsenal at the time. And then he got injured. Now look at it.
Did that not tie in with Tonali getting suspended as well?
No, because that was when Pope got injured. That was beginning of December. Tonali got suspended. End of October?
I saw a lot of him. Pete. I don't agree with. I think Pope. He wasn't terrible. Awesome. He wasn't terrible, but I just don't. He wasn't Nick Pope of the season before. I don't think personally.
The reason we're talking about goalies now, Graeme, is because we acknowledge like Nick Pope's a good goalkeeper. He is a good goalkeeper. I just think, he's not the number one for the next 2-3 years, in my opinion. I just don't think.
I agree.
If Nick Pope was to leave now, he's not getting in the top 6 team. He's just not. And Dubravka, unfortunately, is not the Dubravka of 2 years ago, because Dubravka, since he's come back in, albeit that good Liverpool game, I'll admit, when Nick Pope came in, I think us boys, we were saying, weren't we? Oh, is Pope better? Is Dubravka better? I don't know. But since Dubravka's been out and Pope's come back in, Man United sent him back on loan because they didn't want him. And then since Dubravka's come back in, we have missed Pope. But we do acknowledge that we need an upgrade. And I suppose we're hoping that maybe the club are looking and thinking, you know what, we can't have Dubravka for the rest of the season. Or do you think that they think that Dubravka will do from now till when Pope's back and then in the summer upgrade?
I just say it's a situation, you guys. As we said, you might only get one player in, maybe two, at best three. The goalkeeping department just isn't a priority. It really isn't. And
what?
And I think in the summer, when you got a top class England goalkeeper like Aaron Ramsdale available, if Eddie Howe is still in charge at that point, it's a player he knows well. It's a player the staff know well. He'd want to keep an eye on.
Graeme, do you think there's more likelihood of? I know you mentioned about the number 10, and you were talking about Paqueta, and obviously way back when we were talking about Maddison before he joined Tottenham. Do you think there's more chance of Newcastle signing like a Morgan Gibbs-White, for example, than or do you think it would be more like a right winger? Is it, if we were going for a stellar signing, do you think it would be a right winger or a number 10, or do you think that we probably won't be signing any forward options whatsoever
in the summer? I think it would depend on who's in charge of the team.
You're opening up a can of worms here, Graeme.
I'm not Pete. You're a Champions League team who is currently in 9th place in the Premier League. You're currently underperforming massively, and and as I've said, I've banged this drum, and Daz or not, I banged this drum since I first talked to you guys a couple of years ago. Piff are here to win. They're not, as much as you guys love Eddie Howe. Piff aren't here to be in love with Eddie Howe and be nice. You've got a nice manager in charge. Piff are here to make Newcastle United the best team in world football. And if Eddie Howe's not up to the job, as much as Amanda Staveley et al. Can say, "Oh, we love Eddie, he's part of the family and part of the furniture," that's not football. Piff are here to win, and if Eddie Howe isn't the man to produce it, he'll be gone, and you'll be replaced by someone who they think is superior. That's the footballing world we're living in, and as Newcastle fans, I think it's one you would want. Eddie Howe is a wonderful guy. He's done a very good job for you. But if he's not up to the task, a change has got to be made. I'm not saying it has to be made, but I think Piff will make that. If you finish the season in 9th place, I don't see how he can carry on. I really don't. It's a massive failure if he finishes 9th. Massive failure.
I think that's more than a fair point. In that, I think Berkeley Boss has made a comment earlier with regards to this. You're obviously not seeing the channel when Graeme comes on. This is what we do. We battle back and forth on players all the time. This is what
makes this show great.
Yeah, it does, because this is it. Like, look, if we all sat here and gone, yeah, we all agree with everything that we're going to say, like that doesn't make a show. Like we have.
Chris is enough.
Yeah, Chris is off.
I don't want Pete to get too excited. I don't want Pete to get too excited. I don't like Pete to be on too much of a high. It's about a roller coaster ride, isn't it, Pete? Let's keep it essential. But I'd be very excited by getting Calvin. See, and everybody thinks just a lot of Newcastle fans don't get excited by Calvin Phillips. I think it'd be a great signing going forward for the future. I think that's the sort of sign you need to make. You can't sign a centre forward every window, but I do. What I was saying to Chris there, I think going forward the future, it will depend on who's in charge and what they want. It's a fascinating debate, and I suspect, guys, it's a debate that you're going to be having an awful lot more in the coming weeks.
Definitely, and this goes back to the point that you've just made, Graeme. When you said, this is Ian McKenna, and thanks for that comment in response to Berkeley, who may have not seen previous shows with us on here. And it said, at times we do need a bit of a slap as a kind of as a fan base, because we think that we're suddenly the biggest club in the world, and that's not necessarily the reality. We're a very, very good club that's going in the right direction, that's not playing well right now. And what we need is a little bit of reality. Look, people might not agree with everything that Graeme's saying, but Graeme's saying it from his sources, from who he knows, and he's giving us a true perspective. We could be sat here, and Graeme, you said it earlier on in the show, you could be telling us everything you want to hear, and we would go, we're getting 16 players in this window. Get in, and that's not the reality. And
I've said, I think it's unfair. Newcastle are in this position because the Premier League have got a massive focus on Newcastle. They're investigating every minutiae detail. If the Adidas deal will be looked at, the sponsorship will be looked at, and I think it's totally unfair. It's like Chelsea's deals won't be getting looked at under the same detail. Man City's haven't been. I think it's totally unfair on Newcastle, but unfortunately, that's the current ocean that they're navigating. PIF know that, but it's just an unfortunate case of where Newcastle are. But as I've said, PIF will know what they're doing. You have to trust in PIF, and that's the only thing I'd say to Newcastle fans is, it's not about trusting in Eddie Howe. It's trusting in PIF. They've got you to where they are now. They're the ones who appointed him in the first place. Yeah, Amanda Stave and the board are pumping up the fans as much as they can. But you're going to expand St James's. And you're doing all this for a reason, because they want to make you the best team in the world. And loyalty is a wonderful thing, but loyalty doesn't win you silverware.
No?
Alex Ferguson at Man United, would be a case in point. They stuck with him when he was on the brink of being sacked, but 25 years later, he brought in plenty of trophies. I know.
A near case in point, Daz, might be Manchester City when they didn't stick with Mark Hughes, who the fans loved. Yeah. Sven-Goran Eriksson, who the fans loved.
Yeah, we could bounce back and forth. Yeah.
I've only got one.
Rafa Benitez, Liverpool.
Oh God!
There you go.
I've really got one thing left to ask you before we get to a few questions to round it up in there. It's basically, we haven't really touched on it. We haven't really touched on it during the show. And
you've got 10 minutes, Pete. I've got to go and watch the dart. You've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, we'll
Me too.
But, one last thing from me before we get to questions is anything from Saudi. We've got free reign for Saudi, but it's all gone a little bit quiet. Is there a genuine link to Saudi or not?
There is. You've got the same owners as the biggest 4 teams in Saudi Arabia. The same people who are paying Cristiano Ronaldo's wages are paying Eddie Howe's wages. There's obviously a link. There's a link there. It's a fascinating one. I think Newcastle are looking at Chelsea are looking at the situation. They don't want to annoy the rest of the Premier League. The facility is there. Did they use it this January? Did they use it another time? Did they look at it in the summer? Then they look to bring Neves in, Mitrovic, whatever, and do a double deals in the summer? I suspect they might be waiting for the summer, keeping the powder dry, as we just talked about before, because they might only be able to do this once. I think this loophole will get closed at some point. I think it will. So Newcastle might only get one run at it. Do you do it now in this January, or do you wait until the summer when you could possibly get 2 or 3, and maybe do it then? I suspect that might be the case.
I hope so. I'm not at the point where we need to be playing nice anymore. I think we need to get the players in.
I totally agree, Pete. If I was them, I'd be taking Ruben Neves, Mitrovic, Milinkovic, Savic. I'd be doing it now. And do you know what? I think it's a strange one. I think if you were challenging for the title, I think there might have been more chance of it.
Yeah, just on that, we were talking to Kieran Maguire there at the start of this week on New Year's Day, and he was saying that those players are on massive wages, and if we're bringing them in and they only paying 10% of those wages, Premier League will have a problem with signing those kind of loan deals off.
Yeah, of course they will. But Newcastle point to the fact that they're paying 90% of Isaac Hayden's wage at standard wage, probably. So it's not. It's just how some deals are done. But as I said, them loopholes are there, and they'd hope to get some of them through. Sponsorship is a way, especially with loan deals, is a way of getting them through. I think. I'm told they're a lot easier than to do permanent deals. So it's going to be fascinating.
I think that's a great point, Graeme, is that they've allowed those loan deals to be done. So how they're done shouldn't really matter. We're
coming back to that microscope question, aren't we, Pete? Well, unfortunately, Newcastle United are under this microscope, which they shouldn't be. It's unfair, but unfortunately they are. But and the thing about taking players from Pro League as well, guys. Remember, there isn't a limit on this, Pete. You could go and sign 6 to 8. You could go and sign 10 of them if you wanted to. And the Premier League regulations are not there. You could have 10 loan players from the Saudi Pro League if you wanted. There's nothing to stop foreign loans. There's not a maximum on it. So Hull did it not long ago with 6 to 8 when they stayed up. It's an interesting one. I think they might wait till the summer to look at this. I think the situation at the moment doesn't lend itself to it, but it's going to be a fascinating subject going forward.
Okay, so that's the decided question out there. We'll definitely come back to that over the course of the window. Chris, I know you've got a question for Graeme, and then a few questions from Gaz, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah, Graeme. So I've just got one very, very quick question for you.
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Right. I didn't hear the sound. The sound was off there. I didn't hear the sound.
Oh, was it? Yeah. I was just saying it's a loaded question. That's all it was.
Yeah. They all are. They all are.
No, what I wanted to know was, and obviously I know you're not. I don't want you to, pin all our hopes on anything, or overcommit. But if Eddie Howe was to be fired, what kind of manager do you think that Newcastle or its owners would be looking at? Like, what kind of ilk of manager do you think that we'd be looking at? Would we go for a huge upgrade? Would we go for like a Eddie Howe-esque type manager, or do you think we go out and try and get the biggest, best, most prestigious manager we could?
Yeah, I think I don't. It's hard to see a change this season. I think it would have to get really. It'd have to get really messy for it to be this season. I don't see it being the same. But when they do come to do it, you're talking someone with a CV that will be equal to anyone in world football. It's going to have to be someone with titles on the CV. They're being handed a huge chance to win the Premier League. That's how PIF will be selling it. You're coming here to win the Premier League, so they're going to have to appoint someone that's capable of winning the Premier League. I've seen certain people linked, but it's going to be someone with a world-class CV. It really is. I don't necessarily see that as someone being Jose Mourinho, for instance, but hey, Newcastle job will be enticing to people. And I really hope for you guys, Eddie Howe turns it around, and I know you love him and you want to keep him, but it's a fascinating one. Piff, they are ahead of schedule, but you are where you are now, and I feel sorry for Eddie. He overachieved in that time for him, but if he's finished fourth with the squad, not as good as the one he's got now. It's unfortunately he's made his own bed, hasn't he? In that situation. So but to answer your question, Chris, I fully believe that it'd be someone with a world-class CV, or as Piff C, a world-class CV, be someone with trophies on it, someone with league titles on it. But I don't think it will be someone in that young, untested mold like an Eddie Howe was to a certain degree. It's going to be someone with league titles on there.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I've just seen an article just come out not long ago. Daily Mail have just said Newcastle are looking very seriously into replacing Eddie Howe with Michel Sanchez of Girona, who are currently fighting for the league title in La Liga. Obviously, he's the top of the La Liga at the moment. Made waves in La Liga at the moment. That's the first link I've ever seen of someone potentially replacing Eddie Howe, which is why I just wanted to throw it out there now. It's not come from come from Craig Hope. It's come from a different person.
I've heard a few names. He's not one I've heard before. I say I don't think it'd be someone like that. Even if say if Eddie Howe went at the end of the month, one of the favourites would be De Zerbi, for instance. I think they would want someone even more high caliber than that. I really do. I think it's going to be someone with league titles on the CV. You know, it's going to be someone. It's going to be a massive name.
And Ian, we're not saying.
Yeah, a Mourinho type does certainly. I think that's who it will be. It's going to be someone who can come in, and it's going to be. Even like, Rafa was a huge name when he came in. Of course, he was one year, but it's going to be someone bigger than that. It's going to be someone. It's going to be someone who they perceive as a top 5 manager in world football. That's who it's
like
going to
be. Like a Simeone or something. Simeone's. There's rumours that he's not very happy at Atletico.
Just signed a new deal. But someone like someone of that ilk, Chris, definitely. That's the way it is, and that it will be someone of that ilk who if and when Eddie does leave, whether it's this summer, 2 years, 3 years down the line, his replacement will be someone regarded as a world-class manager. It won't be someone who's up and I don't think it'll be someone who's up and coming in the slightest. No. It'll be someone who's already tried and tested.
Ian's just said that I can't believe after a few months of flashing PSG, people are even talking about getting rid of Howe. We're not talking about getting rid of Howe, but what we're saying.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying Eddie Howe's a wonderful manager. He's done a great job. He's a wonderful guy. I'm just making it clear. Piff are not here to make friends. Yes, they'll make friends naturally when Newcastle win the Premier League. That's what they're here to do. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. They're here to win the Premier League, and I know Newcastle fans will be disappointed, but hey, if Piff win that Premier League, all will be forgotten, won't it?
Yeah.
A few questions to round off before we all head off to watch the darts and other things that we're planning on doing. What you got for us, fella? What you got for us?
I like that one Graeme had there. If Piff win the league, everything will be forgotten. That's kind of a theme that people were trying to get at the very start. But yeah, right, Colin. Thanks, Colin, for the donation, super chat. As always, thanks for your question, Colin, as well. We'll move on. Thanks as always. Back linking to the Dan Ashworth talk. I'm guessing, Graeme, you probably don't have any details on compensation figure if it was to materialize.
Yeah, in today's modern world, it's not a big number for these type of managers. It's not a huge transfer fee, and it'd be in terms of what they would lose in terms of play, it'd be pretty derisory. But yeah, we're talking millions. But hey, in the modern day world, it wouldn't be huge.
Nobby Clark has put down a £200 bet with you, Graeme, for the Dan Ashworth is here in Newcastle in 2 years' time.
I generally don't care if he is or not. We can only tell you. We can only tell you. We can only tell you what the Newcastle sources are saying, and that's. I'm sure Pete would like to flash up a story from Newcastle denying that Ashworth is leaving. You won't be able to find one in the last 2 weeks, Pete. Yeah.
True.
We called for it last night.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
We all said it on the show last night. Is that we need Newcastle to come out and say this is not happening. But you're absolutely right, Graeme. It has. That's part of the problem. That's why we're in this position right now. Great point.
Nobby Clark asked another one. He says, "Lisi, any chance of him moving
in the summer?" Certainly. Yeah, he's a player who all the big clubs really, really like. They think he's special. There'll be a tug of war in the summer for him. It really will. Newcastle might very well be in it. It wouldn't surprise me. We're talking Man City. We're talking Liverpool level. Yeah, a lot of scouts, most scouts in the Premier League think he is special. And I like him as well. I think he's a very, very good talent.
Yeah.
Speaking of scouts, we'll link in with this question is, Graeme, I know we have had scouts going to Italy to look at Matheus Sulja. He's currently on loan. What's the news on him? Anyone on the news on him?
I haven't heard much from him. He's on loan. He's on loan from. He's not on loan from Newcastle. Actually, yeah, Juve. He's not in Newcastle. I thought I was suggesting he was a Newcastle player, and he's scouting out there. So I've seen him. He was linked to. It wasn't Newcastle. He was linked to someone else. He's a top player.
Palace on there.
Yeah, and I saw him somewhere in Europe as well. I think, Pete. He's a good player. Newcastle scouts doing the work, and yeah, he'll be one on the list. Don't really think they're fairly happy with the wide areas at the moment. I don't think that'll be a massive priority. Be interested to see what happens in the summer, like Jacob Murphy, maybe if they move him on, or I know he's doing talks about a possible new contract for him, rewarding him for his progress. So we'll see, yeah, but nothing imminent for Sula.
One we didn't mention in the goalkeepers is maybe De Gea. He was talking about as well. Obviously out of contract, no club.
Yeah, it's possible. There was contact there. I think De Gea's people made it clear he would be willing to go to Newcastle. But again, it's one of those. I think if you were battling top 4 title, it'd be much more likely. We're going to see. Keep it an interesting one for January, guys. We're going to see if the likes of Kasper Schmeichel come back to England, maybe Keylor Navas. There's going to be quite a lot of interesting striking moves now. So De Gea to Newcastle, yeah, it wouldn't be a massive shock.
I had Kasper Schmeichel as an option because for that exact reason, he is coming back. The Leicester Mercury reported on it that he is coming back. He wants to come back to the Premier League from Nice, and I was going to ask it. We can probably save it for another show, but that was it wasn't linked directly to Newcastle. But like you said, he is wanting to come back to the Premier League, so that's another one there for sure.
Ronald asked the question, what's going on with the Garan Kroll? He's heard nothing about him for the last while.
Yeah, it's a worry. I think that Hartslow didn't do him any good. And I think the main worry with him, when I saw that he joined Volendam, we're talking real like League One size club, really. We're not talking a decent size club. I think that was a huge worry to me. I haven't heard he's pulling up trees, to be honest. Yeah, I think Mintef, as we've discussed, very much ahead of him in the pecking order. And well, yeah, one who will look to get back to Tyneside in the summer and assess it from there.
Yeah.
Okay. I got another question. It's kind of linked to something we talked about. Actually, Jimmy Watt put it to us when we were on with Kieran Maguire. Then TalkSport robbed our story, and I know other channels are talking about it now. But do we need to sell? Is he still winning? Do we need to sell a big name player to like the likes of Bruno, Isaac, Botman to unlock FFP and us to enable us to bring in, say, 3 or 4 similar type big signings then?
I'm told not necessarily. This Adidas deal starting in the summer is huge. There's going to be more similar sponsorship deals as well. I think if you could finish where you currently are, I think there's a good chance of you having to sell because these players may not want to hang around. That's the issue as well. That's what that's Piff's worry. Just Bruno's given everything he has to you. Bruno, I still don't think he gets the credit he deserves for a player who came in from France. I think he's the best foreign signing in Premier League history for someone who's come in at such a high level and sustained that. I genuinely think there's nobody better in Premier League history who's come in, become one of the best midfielders in the Premier League for an unfashionable club as well at the time because they were relegation contenders. I still don't think he gets the credit he deserves. One of the true unsung heroes of the Premier League. I still don't think he gets the credit he deserves. A wonderful player, but that's a worry for Piff as well, guys. It is. If you can't keep selling. Bruno knows he's got some of the world's biggest clubs looking at him. Alexander Isak, wow. We talk about the Chelsea's as well. Everyone who wouldn't want him. So that is a worry as well for the club. In terms of this having to sell a player to spend money, it was played down when I was talking about. I'm not an expert like Kieran is. If he says things like this, it's a consideration. Yeah, it's a consideration. I don't see it because then that's a step backwards. Personally, I think they'll get enough sponsorships in. I think they'll get rid of some of this baggage. They've still got a lot of baggage in the squad, and I think they'll get rid of some of them.
Yeah, we have.
I think we'll start
stadium naming rights and stuff like that could play a factor.
Yeah,
as well.
I think we'll start getting to the fact we might see some of the heroes, the current heroes who are culled. The likes of Nick Pope, likes of Kieran Trippier. They've only got a certain shelf life, some of these guys. So it wouldn't surprise me more so than if we see an Isaac Bruno. I think some of the other older guard might be under threat before them.
Last question, Graeme, because we've kept you long enough, comes from Tom. Are Newcastle going to beat Sunderland at the weekend?
Yeah. I've looked at your faces throughout this contest, throughout this podcast, so it's YouTube guys. I hope you do, just to cheer you guys up. Pete, Pete, he knows he's not getting his striker in. He's not getting a new goalkeeper. He's only got Calvin Phillips to look forward to. I feel sorry for Pete now. So yeah, I really hope so for your guys' sakes. I don't see how you can't beat them really, but surely you do.
It's okay for you, Graeme. It's okay for you. We have to virtually live with them, and thanks, Graeme. That you answered all the questions. Thanks for them.
It's great. Yeah, I'll be back on later in the window, no doubt, talking. Where Pete will be laughing at me once you've signed all these big players, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it transpires. Guy, it wouldn't surprise me if they've got one up the sleeve, but even if they did have one up the sleeve, I don't think it'd be a centre forward. I think it could be a forward. Who could help cover for Barnes? I think it'd be a wide man.
Really Miggy at the moment, and
a wide man who can play. But Gordon plays on the right often enough, doesn't he? And Barnes can play there as well. These wingers can play the side. If you did do a surprise deal, a surprise big deal, I think it would be for a wide man because I think you'll be bringing a midfielder in anyway. Yeah.
Graeme, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to let you go to your darts. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a great chat. Banter is always flying between the four of us. And, this is why we love it. And thank you for your honest assessments of where you think we're at as a club, signings, all the rest of it. And I'm sure we'll definitely get back on before the end of the window. That's for sure, mate. Where can we find you just before you go?
Yeah, great. Just Graeme Bailey on X/Twitter. HITC Football is a new home, but all my stuff is on there. So, if I am reporting the Dan Ashworth at Old Trafford, tell Nobby I'll be back on to claim my £200. So.
Nobby won't forget, that's for sure.
Virtual handshake.
Yeah. You take care.
I'll be back on to claim my free membership anyway in time for next show. Yeah.
It's in the works.
Honourable Middlesbrough membership. One off.
In that case, no, it's not in the works.
When you win the League Cup, come back to us.
Pete, don't be bitter. Just because we're semi-finalists. It's so bitter, Pete. Just because we're semi-finalists in the League Cup. Come on.
We should be there playing you deep in the semi-finals. That's what we should be doing. But hey, for another time, another season. Yes. But
I do wish you luck for the weekend. I do hope you win.
By the way, Graeme, who you wanting to win this match? Luke Littler or Luke Humphries?
Oh, Littler all the way. Yeah, Littler all the way, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The other guy's a bit boring, the other guy, isn't
he? Yeah.
Good stuff. Look,
nice one, guys. Take care, guys.
Take care. See you guys.
Graeme. Take care. Good man. Oh, it's a laugh for Graeme.
Always.
He's brought us back down to earth on the 3rd of January, hasn't he? No striker, no goalie.
And maybe we need that because
maybe we do.
We're kind of expecting it to happen all the time. But I'm still confident 3 players are coming in. Like Graeme said, 1, maybe 2. We have to remember, Sandro Tonali isn't a part of this squad that had a squad number. Like he won't be. So we've at least got 1 space available to fill, which we assume, as Graeme said, is the Calvin Phillips situation. But after that, this is where I think Eddie Howe needs to be ruthless. And I think there's a couple of players that might well not have a squad.
That word again.
And you know what, as well? This is where we're going to see the ruthlessness of Eddie Howe, because now people may or may not like this, but his job could potentially be on the line. And if he wants to keep his job, he's going to have to make those tough decisions. It happens in all businesses. It happens in all walks of life. Sometimes you've got to look after yourself and you've got to do things that are right for you. And, at the minute, things need to be turned around. And he's going to have to, if he's got these players on the bench who he doesn't want to play, he's got to be knocking on the door of the owners and saying, listen, I need more players in. I need this, I need that. And this is why I keep reverting back to it. Where I say, if we have a really poor transfer window, or we have a window where not many people come in, that's when I'd start thinking, well, surely Eddie Howe can't be saying to the owners, I'll be fine, everything will be fine. Surely he's knocking down that door saying, I need this. And if he doesn't get it, what does that say?
Lads, what a start to the new year. There's talk of our manager going, there's talk of our director of football going, there's even speculation that we need to sell 3 of our best players. Not all 3, but one of our 3 of our best players to progress. So yeah, it's a bit crazy. I think take everything with a pinch of salt. The transfer window is open. We're going to smash Sunderland on Saturday. All will be rosy. And we'll be back to on our way back to where we were. Fingers crossed.
Hope so.
Fingers crossed. Live goals are put in there about Lloyd. Another player that we'll discuss over the course of this window, that's for sure. There are so many players that we haven't even touched on tonight that we've got ready to go to talk about, that we will in other shows. There are links there coming out of our ears, and there are players that we haven't talked about that could well be in consideration. So don't worry, we will be discussing them at some point. In Ian, Ian A is mentioned about Graeme having that sort of confidence that he's got those links with PIF and all the rest of it. I don't think he has. I think he's just given it from his own perspective, from the sources that he has. That may well not be PIF, but he's got sources or links, whether it's agents, whether it's players, whether it's whoever, that he will give his own opinions on. And it is his own opinions that we ask for on what he thinks is potentially going to happen. So we're not saying, or he's not saying that he's got links with PIF. He's just giving his opinion on that, which is what it's all about. And we know journalists do have their contacts and all the rest of that. But look, there'll be other journalists coming on. There will be other conversations. We will have our discussions on all things transfer related, and we'll look forward to it. But we've got over 100 likes, but we had 280 plus in the chat. Come on, hit those likes on the way out, people. It makes sense. And consider subscribing to the channel. I've had 30 plus subscribed just in the last few days. So come and join us.
Just as we round up, that's what you're.
That's fine. I
was wondering where he was flicking, but as Chris reminds everyone how to hit the subscribe button. But the other thing I wanted to say to you is, yes, where you can find us. You can find us across a number of different platforms. Obviously, YouTube, that's where you're watching now, or maybe you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon Music. Also, we're on Twitter/X. TikTok and Insta, you will find us there. And also for any business inquiries, you can catch us on loadedmag NUFC info@gmail.com. So that's our business email address. Also, just going to tell people, flick it back one sec, tell people what's happening tomorrow. A big one tomorrow, lads. A new guest that we've never had on the show. Take it away.
Sky Sports' Tom White, Sunderland fan, is coming onto the show to talk the big game on Saturday. And I tell you what, I don't know if you saw the video with Tom White today. He's whilst Pete Graves has been away, he's had him up big time, using his locker to strategically put a Sunderland shirt in there to say that Pete Graves is keeping his Sunderland shirt tight. He won't be happy with that, that's for sure. So
I think Pete Graves is going to want revenge.
Oh, I think so too. That is right. And they've got that deal, remember, that whoever wins, the other person has to wear the opposition shirt. So that will be an interesting conversation with Sean. But we're looking forward to it. Away Days is back. Tom White, the boys will be there to talk all things, the big FA Cup tie. We'll be coming to Chris for his selection. That'll be interesting. And we'll be getting right to it. So yeah, make sure you're involved. Sunderland, Newcastle, away days preview. Come on, a must watch. That's for sure.
Also, a shout out to our sponsors as well, H2O Bathroom Design Co. and the Radiator Shed. And you know already the fabulous radiators and bathrooms that are available from our sponsors. As Chris disappears again. But that's it, I think, Pete. We'll round off the show, I think. Hope everyone enjoyed it. As Pete says, make sure you smash that like button and catch us tomorrow and then into next week because there's more to come.
Definitely. There we go.
So I guess we'll say, how'd you like that?
Take care, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Drink it.